Hi, my name is Kirstin Elliot, and I'll be talking to you today about diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic illness that occurs when the pancreas stops producing insulin, does not produce enough insulin, or does not correctly use the insulin that is produced. I'll be talking to you about type 1 and type 2 diabetes, signs and symptoms, and treatments. Type 1 diabetes is where the body stops making insulin or does not make enough insulin. There is no cure, it is not preventable, and there will be a lifelong need for insulin via insulin injections or an insulin pump. This type normally occurs at a younger age than type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is where the body does not correctly use the insulin and eventually will not produce enough insulin. This is caused by decreased activity, obesity, and mostly we find a family history. It can be treated by oral medications, weight control, and an increase in physical activity. This is a preventable type of diabetes. Signs and symptoms of diabetes include extreme thirst, frequent urination, tired, and blurry vision. I did search terms to find information regarding diabetes on Google search, and I looked up information on diabetes education and how to control diabetes. I found 3 websites that I thought were interesting: American Association of Diabetes Educators, American Diabetes Association, and Centers for Disease Control. I hope to find education, personal stories, and support for diabetic patients. On the American Association of Diabetes Educators, this was a wealth of information. This talked about how insurance would pay for a healthcare team that helps newly diagnosed and also patients living with the diagnosis of diabetes to help develop a plan to manage their diabetes. There were multiple resources on this website regarding healthy eating tips, understanding insulin, how it works, understanding your glucose machine, tips for vacations, regarding meal plans, tips for if you're having people over for a football game or if you're planning a big meal for a holiday. It was very informative. There were many examples that could be printed out. It was a very nice website. Personal stories were listed also. There was a story regarding Tony, and on his wedding anniversary, he had signs and symptoms of diabetes that he ignored. They included frequent urination and blurry vision. His wife eventually took him to the hospital and he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Later, he dealt with depression, stress, and anxiety, which is common in this illness. This reminded me of a story that we read in our book, If You Have to Wear an Ugly Dress, Learn to Accessorize, where Linda was talking about her situation when she was diagnosed with lupus. It showed how she felt powerless, she needed counseling and psychotherapy and talk therapy, she needed support groups, and she needed the help of her family and friends. Tony's wife was very instrumental in his treatment. She attended many groups and went to all his doctor's appointments. These groups were set up by this website. She got the information from them, and they eventually learned how to manage his illness and to treat his diagnosis of diabetes type 2. Maria was another example. She was 35 years old when she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. She already had a family history and was knowledgeable about the disease, but she could not manage her own weight, diet, and exercise. She attended some diabetic education classes provided by this website and turned her lifestyle around. She learned how to correctly eat, manage her weight, and even had some tips from her counselors that told her after she eats a meal she should go take a 10-minute walk, and this really helped her gain her control over her weight. Another website was the American Diabetes Association. There was a wealth of information. The homepage had listings of who's at risk, living with diabetes, and how to cope with diabetes. The interesting part of this website I thought was there was a tab that you could click for a Spanish version, turned the whole entire website into Spanish, and there was also a tab for becoming a member. They have an online community, kind of a chat group, that those with diabetes can converse with each other. It was like a social media website, and it was nice because it was diabetics talking to other diabetics, and they had simple things as, I can't control my glycohemoglobin, and somebody else would say how they did gain control, they can't get their glucose under a certain number, and they would give examples of what foods they would eat, what diet choices they make, or even the exercises choices. So it was a pleasant website for patients who may not have family that they can talk to, and they don't want to ask their doctor little questions that they were asking on this website. It was very personal. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also had a wealth of information, everything that the other two websites had, but it also had good information on how to prevent diabetes. It did talk about if you are around 45 years old and you're overweight, you have a family history of diabetes, you're not very active, you have high blood pressure, and increased cholesterol, you should automatically get checked for diabetes. It gave information that just simply 30 minutes of exercise 5 days a week can significantly decrease the risk of diabetes. There are multiple similarities on these websites. All the information seemed credible. It all meshed together. There were personal stories on all three of the websites, a ton of education, examples on healthy diets, exercising tips and routines, prevention strategies, anything on how to manage a healthy lifestyle, reduce stress. There were multiple programs. You could actually type in where you were from, and it would list programs and activities around your area. And there was information on research on the treatment of diabetes. There were not many differences on the websites. Mainly everything was the same. The Adult Diabetes Association website did, as I said, have, or not the the American Diabetes Association did have the Spanish version, as I said, that was very helpful, and the community chat room, which looked like everybody enjoyed who was involved. In conclusion, prevention is key in type 2 diabetes, that healthy lifestyle, the weight control, and if you know that you have a family history, I would hope that you would be encouraged to do these things to prevent diabetes. There is no prevention, unfortunately, for type 1 diabetes, but with both of these types, exercise, healthy diet, weight control, education, and management of the disease, they're all key. Thank you very much.